שמרו בני ישראל אלווס השבos vasois es השבos.
Okay, welcome to Derech Hashem. We're on page 386 of the Name and Edition, which is Chelik Gimel, Perek Beis Os Vav, Section 3, Chapter 2, and number 6. And we've been talking about the last several weeks the Jewish view on witchcraft and wizardry. And we said that name is a little misleading because we're going to find that there are two general ways of manipulating the spiritual world to affect things in the physical world. One way is a holy way, which we can use, and we've discussed that a little bit, and then there's an unholy way. So the unholy way, that's really witchcraft and wizardry. That is something which is prohibited. In fact, in Judaism, you're not allowed to let a witch live. A witch or a wizard, Harry Potter and Voldemort would have been killed if they lived in the times of the temple, if there was a Sanhedrin, even Harry Potter, because you're not allowed to do witchcraft and wizardry. But there's another type, another way in which you can cause things to happen in the world which goes against nature. And we started talking about that type last week, the holy way, let's say. So we also mentioned at the beginning of this section that in addition to the physical world, something we've talked about many times is that there is a spiritual world. And it's not that there's just one spiritual world and one physical world, but there are actually multiple spiritual worlds, each one on a higher level than the other, and they're all connected to each other. The higher level of one world is connected to the lower level of the world on top of it, and it goes all the way up and connects until we get to the Kochos, which the Ramchal discussed. So usually in the physical world, if you want to do something, you have to do a physical action. You want to cut down a tree, you have to get an axe, and you have to cut down the tree. But we're learning now there are ways to cut down the tree or do things in the physical world without doing a physical action, by manipulating the spiritual world to accomplish something in the physical world. And the reason that we can do that is because all of these spiritual worlds are connected to the physical world. More than that, the source of everything in the physical world is from the spiritual world. So, for instance, so we have that, and we also talked about how there are angels. Angels are appointed over certain things. That we said there's not a blade of grass doesn't grow in the world unless its malach says grow. So we had that also. So the source of everything only exists because it's connected to this spiritual world, which ultimately everything gets its sustenance from Hashem. So we talked about the first way that you can manipulate the physical world is through the names of Hashem. By using the names of Hashem in a certain way, you can make things happen in the physical world. So since everything in the physical world, the way it's affected is through Hashem's hashbaz, through his, let's say, putting energy through the spiritual worlds, getting to the physical world, if you know a certain name of Hashem, which is associated with that specific hashbah, that specific emanation of Hashem putting his energy into that world, then you could affect the physical world by using that name of Hashem. Hashem has many names. We started by saying that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, that's his holy name that was only pronounced once a year in the temple on Yom Kippur. That name describes more of Hashem in total, let's say, I don't know, maybe his essence in a certain way, whereas other names of Hashem are related to certain forces that he puts into the world, certain hashpahs that he puts into the world. So if you can tap into that specific hashpah, that specific name of Hashem representing that spiritual energy coming into the world, then it could affect the physical world. And that's where we left off. So let's continue on page 386. Is it? Okay. V'hine, hadavar yadua, it's known, she'afal pi sheklal zeh ha'inyan echad hu, even though in general this is one matter, one principle, dahainu hayetziyah migvulei hateva, the principle is that we are going above the natural order, where we are no longer, when we use these principles, these concepts, these rules, we're no longer bound by the physical order. However, there are many details, right? You could, you tell someone, you're going to do a kidney transplant. So you tell a doctor, what's the big deal? You take a kidney from this guy and you put it into this guy. Well, it's not that easy. There's a lot of details how you have to do it. There's a million details. You have to go to school for 10 years to figure out how to do it. So same thing here. When it comes to using the spiritual world, we're saying something, use the name of Hashem and you can make all these cool stuff happen. No, it's an extremely complicated process with many details, and it has to be done in the proper way for it to affect the outcome which you want. According, Hashem made these details based on the different levels and rules that exist in our physical world and in those spiritual worlds. According to its nature, so too you'll need various hashpahs to accomplish the goal which you need. And according to this, you'll need multiple hashpahs. You will also need you'll need to mention multiple names of Hashem with all of their details. And you'll find there are many levels. Just like everything else with its details. So you'll have someone who frees himself from these bonds and restrictions, and somebody else who will free himself a little more. On this based on these concepts that we're discussing, a man or woman, a person, can use the spiritual world to do great and powerful things. What he wouldn't be able to do in the physical world. So, using these names of Hashem, you could accomplish things which you couldn't do on a physical plane, which would be impossible. According to because Hashem put in certain processes and certain mechanisms that are all tied together, that are all dependent on his hashpahos, his emanations, like we mentioned before. Because when a person mentions the certain name of Hashem, he is going to draw forth that emanation of Hashem, and it's going to go through all of those spiritual worlds which we've mentioned before. Hashem will be found to those who call him with that name, according to the way Hashem set it up and that he wants. And that light will shine forth based on that hashpah from the name that was mentioned. So let's just say, so when a person says that name of Hashem, the hashpah, the emanation, will come forth through all of the spiritual worlds, going to a lower and lower level until it comes to the physical world that we're in. So now, I don't know how this works in detail, but let's say you want to cross a creek and it's wet. So you want to get across. So you want the sea to split. So however you would do that, I don't know which name you would need, but whatever name of Hashem you'd use this certain name of Hashem with all of the details and procedures that need to be done. And the name of you would use the name of Hashem that corresponds to the hashpah, the spiritual hashpah that's needed, that would come down would draw Hashem's emanations all the way down to the spiritual worlds until it came to the physical world and split the sea. So that specific name would come on down. I don't know if maybe if you need that name would make wind come, and the wind would blow away the water or something, and you would use that specific name of Hashem. So so Hashem's hashpahs would come down from the higher spiritual worlds to the lower spiritual worlds until it gets to the physical world, and your creek is split, and you can walk on dry land and not get your shoes wet. And I don't know if you could do that with the name of Hashem. So Don't hold me to that if that's not an actual thing that can be done, but maybe it can, whatever example you want to use. Okay. So that's one way to use the positive spiritual forces to interact with the physical world. And we're saying that you can even accomplish, you can even accomplish things in the physical world that you couldn't do, with a normal physical thing, right? I can't go, and split the sea in front of me by any physical process. But I could use the name of Hashem to accomplish that. Now we're going to learn there's another way to use the positive spiritual energy to also accomplish things in the physical world. So the first thing we discussed is using the name of certain names of Hashem which are associated with certain hashbaz and certain emanations. Okay. There's another process that Hashem put in the world in this way. God gave power to angels to do specific acts. Now, we mentioned earlier that angels, they don't really have an independent power. They can't go against Hashem, but they're like a funnel, we said. That angels are spiritual beings which exist, that Hashem gave them certain missions to do. Like we said, there's an angel, let's say, in charge of growing the grass. So obviously the power is coming from Hashem. There's no independent force that the angel has to make the grass grow, but through the angel who serves as a funnel to get that spiritual energy to make the grass grow. But there are angels which are in charge of these spiritual forces. But they're not always operative. Just whatever the world needs, right? The grass doesn't grow in the winter. So the angel that's in charge of growing the grass, he's not using his forces to grow the grass. It's all dependent on the way Hashem set it up. Amnam, yesh bekochim shicholim lipol min ha'pa'ula hahi yaisim ramashe po'alim b'tmidus. U'b'yosei koich v'chayzek shelo keseder ha'tmidi. U'b'zeh haderech yifalu pa'amim rabos b'maiseh hanisim v'aniflaos. Sheyichud sheba'olam kvi ratzoni yizbarach shmo b'eish yirtzeh. However, sometimes these angels, they can act in a way that's not in the normal way. And they can affect the physical world in a way which is not the natural order, and this is what we would call miracles, right? So to take my example, that grass doesn't grow in the winter. If the angel would put through his spiritual energy, then the grass will grow even in the winter. V'amnam. So, meaning that in addition to using, the first way was using Hashem's name directly to cause the hashbaz coming down, but a person could also tell an angel to do something which is not according to his normal process. So just the very boring example that I was saying, making the grass grow. Let's say you want your lawn to look really nice in the winter. So you can get an angel, the angel who's in charge of grass. You would get the angel to have your grass grow even in the winter. Not much of a miracle, but I guess technically it is a miracle. Sorry, I couldn't think of a more exciting example on the spot. Probably should have had a better one prepared. Okay, v'amnam ratzah adon baruchu v'nasan kavod l'shmo. Hashem wanted that honor should be given to his name. Shekishayuskar al hamalachim lefi haseder shesider. Dahainu al malachi pu'ula achas. Hashem shenesiachas lo yizbarach shemo al shem ha'ashpa. Sheba nitla ha'inyan hahu kulo. Hina yuchar hamalach lepol ba'osa ha'kayach ha'yosa shenimsa b'yada la'osa ha'pu'ula. Kvimash yachreyu hamaskir es Hashem alav. So even with the way that that a person can tell an angel to do something, how do you tell an angel to do something? So in this respect, it's similar. Hashem wanted honor to be given to his name, so you would use the name of Hashem, a specific name of Hashem, which is associated with the hashpa, with the emanations coming from Hashem to accomplish the certain task you want accomplished. And when you use that specific name, that forces the angel to do the thing you want done. So again, you want to have a really nice grass in February, so you would use the specific name of Hashem that's associated with the hashpa of making the grass grow, and that would force the angel to make the grass grow. Now, we're going to learn there's a difference. I know they sound very similar, but there is going to be a difference, right? The first way we have is using a name of Hashem to directly bring down his emanations. The second way is using a name to force an angel to accomplish something. Okay. He gave another example here. Let's say there's an angel whose function is only at night. So using a certain name of Hashem, you could force the angel to do those things during the day and go beyond what he's normally able to do. All right, let's go a little further. We find two principles here. The first is that you mention a certain name of Hashem that he should answer you. And through that, you get Hashem's hashpah. And you could create in the world whatever it is. And the second way is to force angels to do certain things that they wouldn't normally do. Don't think that just because you know these tricks, let's say, I shouldn't call them tricks, just because you know how to do it, that it's always going to work. There are certain rules that Hashem and conditions that need to be met for this to be work. Certain ways that it needs to be done, and a certain way that you'll be successful. Look for because there is barachim. However, let's say even if you know the whole process, you went to Kabbalah school for 10 years and you know how to use angels and you know how to use the name of Hashem to do certain things, it could be Hashem will stop you anyway. Just because you know the rules of how it works doesn't mean you're going to be successful. He says we find things like this also in the physical world. You know, you could try to do something in the physical world, but Hashem can make a gezer and say, I don't want this to happen, and it's not going to happen. So the same thing in the spiritual world. The Ramchal in Das Tfunos brings an example of this. When Yirmiyahu, we're just coming off of Tisha B'Av, but when Yirmiyahu told the Jewish people that the Jerusalem was going to be destroyed, it says that they didn't take him seriously because they said, what's the big deal? You know, they knew how to do this. We'll just use the name of Hashem to tell angels to protect Yerushalayim and we'll be fine. So the Ramchal in Das Tfunos writes that they forgot the main thing here is that Hashem is in charge, and the angels only get their power from Hashem. Angels don't have any independent power. So even if you're using those specific mechanisms to get the angels to do what you want, if Hashem doesn't want it to happen, it's not going to happen. If Hashem wants to destroy Jerusalem, Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. Ve'ulam l'sharish harishon shehu askar shmo yisbarach lehimashech mimenu hashba v'adei sheyitztarach hakor ve'elav yisbarach v'advekas bo. He says to use the name of Hashem. The first method we use, just using the name of Hashem to draw down these forces, he says for sure you have to be very close to Hashem and have a very special relationship for it to work. The closer you are to Hashem, the closer you are to Hashem, the more successful you'll be in accomplishing this. And the less you have, you won't get it. However, for the second way, you don't need this condition. Even So the second way, you don't have to have that special relationship. You have to know how it works. And just like there are certain rules in the physical world that you need an axe to chop down a tree, you still need to fulfill those specific rules when it comes to telling angels what to do. So the first method, using the name of Hashem, you have to have a very special relationship for it to work with Hashem. But to tell an angel what to do, you don't need to have that relationship. He says, what's clear? It's not proper for a simple person to use the scepter of the king. Meaning, we shouldn't be playing around with this stuff. You have to be a very holy person to start messing around with these methods. On this, the rabbi said, someone who makes use of the crown of Hashem will pass from the world. He says the only people that are allowed to use these methods are holy people that have a very special relationship and are very close to Hashem. And they only use it in order to sanctify Hashem's name and to do his will, however it is. V'zula zeh, and anything besides this, afal pi shelo timana ha'pa'ula l'mishtamish, im yishmor darchei hashimush karoi, oneshi onish el zedon. And he says, if you use it for another reason besides for sanctifying God's name, you'll be punished. Even though it works, you're going to be punished. So in my example, I want to get through the river, and I just don't want to get wet. Even though I may know the names of Hashem to force an angel to do a certain thing, to split the sea, if I do that, even though it's going to work, you're going to get punished after. The only time a person is allowed to use, one, the name of Hashem, or the name of Hashem to force an angel to do something, is if he has a special relationship with Hashem, and he's doing it in order to make a Kiddush Hashem, and to sanctify God's name. And he writes here on the footnote, Rabbi name, and that's why you find that holy rabbis were very hesitant to use these names in previous generations, because you have to be totally sure that it's a proper situation to be using these holy things, to be using Hashem's name, or to force angels to do something, because if not, the person's going to get punished. He's not allowed to use this unless it's for sanctification of God's name. Okay. Ukfar marti sha'al kapanim ena davar muchlad el migvul bigvulos ma shirasa chacham al yonah yotze nos. And like we already mentioned, it's not a for sure that it's going to work just based on the way Hashem set up the rules. V'gam ba'oso hagvul atzmo gzeroso yisbarach t'mana talada kol zman sheyirtze kushetigzor chachmaso yos hamnir ru'uya una osa. Again, he's saying, one, you can only use it if it's going to sanctify God's name. Two, it only works if you know the certain conditions and you know the method how it works. Number three, even if you use the proper methods, if Hashem doesn't want it to happen in the end of the day, it's not going to happen. So if for some reason, Jewish people are suffering, and a holy person tries to use the name of Hashem to stop the suffering, and he's doing it for Kiddush Hashem, and he knows all the rules, and he's very close to Hashem, it still might not work, because for whatever reason, Hashem decided that the Jewish people in this situation need to suffer. For whatever reason, we obviously, we don't know why, for specific things. So again, just to summarize, we learned the two ways that are technically permissible to use to manipulate the physical world. One is to use the name of God to draw down hashpahs, emanations, to change the physical world. The second way is to use, and in that first way, it only works if you have a very special relationship with Hashem, very close to Hashem. The second way is to use the name of Hashem to command an angel to do something. That you don't need a close relationship with Hashem, but you have to know what you're doing. But in both ways, 1 and 2, you're only allowed to do it if you're holy. You're only allowed to do it if you're a holy person, and you're doing it in order to make a Kiddush Hashem. And if you're doing it for the wrong reason, even though it will work, a person will get punished. Right, any questions or comments? Okay, thank you for coming. Thank you, Leah, again for setting up.